Yes.
Thank you. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
go
loud and
ahead.
clear.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, colleagues, partners, and guests, and more importantly, all of the youth members that have taken the time to attend this event. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to this session as part of the Global Action Week for Education 2026. For those who don't know, this is our 24th annual global campaign that is led by the Global Campaign for Education to advance and defend the fundamental right to education. This year's theme is education financing, which comes with a powerful call to action to hold the flame high for education. This call could not be more than urgent. Across the world, we are witnessing increasing disinvestment in education that is driven by overlapping global crisis, conflict, economic instability, and the growing impacts of climate change. And at the same time, we are seeing a shrinking education aid rise, as well as rising pressures towards privatization of education systems. These trends threaten to reverse hard won work and gains that we have been able to win over the last few decades. Now, the reality is stark. Chronic underfunding continues to undermine the progress towards SDG 4, more broadly, the realization of education as a human right, which, as we see the statistics, being at $97 billion of annual financing gap, and alarmingly, 41 countries still not meeting the international benchmark of education spending. But this is not just an issue of limited resources. It is a story of structural injustice that we are here for in GAWE to highlight, to showcase, as well as showcase the work that we have been focusing in advocating to defend these structural injustices. Therefore, the GAWE 2026 looks at several priorities: keeping accountability to SDG 4, which includes advocating for official development assistance for education, supporting the replenishment of GPE, as well as financing quality public education alongside calling for global financial reform. Now, this includes advancing international tax justice, pushing for debt cancellation, and advocating for stronger global frameworks such as the UN Tax Convention. So, today, as we speak about holding the flame high, we center the role on youth in action. This conversation about today that we'll have will not only be about financing, it is about equity, justice, and political will, and amplifying youth voices as co creators and decision makers at this time. Our incredible youth speakers who are coming from different regional backgrounds and country level and who are great activists and advocates within their own rights will look at the critical perspectives on how youth are financing education intersects with climate justice, gender equality, tax justice, peace building, as well as the global debt crisis and austerity measures. So we look forward to a very engaging program. I will upload the program on the chat box. Salma, can you also enable the chat box so that we can see everyone who's on the call, where they are joining us from? But the first speaker for now would be John. John is coming from the Youth for Tax Justice Network, and he'll be looking at the topic youth advocacy for tax justice, drawing on our engagements in that space. Over to you, John. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is John Kafko. I'm a programs manager at Youth for Tax Justice Network. Briefly, Youth for Tax Justice Network is a Pan-African organization which aims at involving young people's voices meaningfully in the financing for development agenda at a global level. but also at the national levels in the budget cycles. Budget cycles, we mean how resources are collected, how they are allocated, and how they are utilized. So our mandate is involving having young people involved in these discussions and in a meaningful manner. So once again, thank you very much, and greetings to all our audience. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having me. So allow me switch off my video for now because my internet is not the best as I get into my presentation. Oh, thank you very much. So I like the theme for the discussion we are having today. Hold the theme, hold the flame high for education. As I was preparing my presentation, I kept on asking myself, who is this one holding this flame? Who is supposed to hold this flame? And who is fueling this flame? Now, I'll try to answer these questions as I conclude, but I feel this is something we should all ask ourselves as we go on. Now, I was asked to make a presentation on 3 issues. First of all, the number one was reflections from the Nairobi intergovernmental negotiations on the UN tax convention. The second item was having the nexus between education, tax justice, and equity. And then the third was how young people should involve themselves in global tax conversations, the opportunities therein for young people. Now, I'll start with the conversation on the reflections from the Nairobi negotiations. There were quite a lot of things, I should say. First of all, the outstanding was that this was the first session that happened on the African continent. It happened in Nairobi, Kenya. It happened in November. So it was symbolic in a way because most of the sessions have always been happening in New York. So having them here in Nairobi, Kenya on the African continent was very symbolic, and in a way it also shows how inclusive the process is. So that was positive from the very first. Then the second positive I can note is there was a lot of solidarity between civil society organizations, youth organizations, but even the Africa group, basically the African countries which were present in the room. We all spoke with one voice, the civil society, the youth groups, the Africa group. They all spoke with one voice. We made quite a number of submissions, both orally and written. And maybe to highlight some of the issues that we made submissions about was strengthening the draft convention text in terms of the content. For those of you who looked at the draft convention text of October, the one which was first released in October, the text was very weak. It was very optional. It wasn't mandatory, if I should put it that way. Words like may, words like adopt were what was being used. And we kept on pushing for, having mandatory language, for example, shall, having enforcement measures, having basically strong language. We also pushed for strengthening the text on articles around curbing illicit financial flows, fair allocation of taxing rights, which is also very, very important, especially for this conversation. Having intergenerational equity, the convention having an eye on intergenerational equity, and also making sure that tax revenues that are collected are able to finance sustainable development, right from education, climate, and anything you can think about. So those are some of, to mention a few, some of the things we were pushing for. And we got some results from that. For those of us who had a look at the draft text which came out in January 2026, we saw that there was quite a lot of improving in the strength of the language. When it came to the articles on illicit financial flows, fair allocation of taxing rights, mutual development assistance, the text was greatly improved, especially the language. At least now we have a bit of mandatory language because this is supposed to be a binding convention. So we have that in there, but also we have a provision of renegotiating taxation we've been having in our countries, between our countries, developing countries and the developed countries. Most of them give more taxing rights to the developed countries at the expense of developing countries. So this is good news that some of these double taxation treaties can always be renegotiated, and we have more financing for things now like education, which we are speaking about today. So that was also, it's a huge result from the convention, the negotiations and our participation and our advocacy in Nairobi. And then moving on to another positive, we had quite a lot of media engagement, social media especially, trying to break down the content of the convention, what was happening in the room, what was being discussed by the different countries, but also trying to make sure that young people understand what the convention is all about and why it is important for them to participate in this conversation. So this was also a high note it was a positive. Then still on the reflections, to move on to maybe the negative side of it, we didn't have so many African countries in the room. It was quite unfortunate because the negotiations again were on home soil. So you would expect that you have so many African countries in the room, to talk and discuss. But unfortunately, there were few. And since we are going to have another session in Nairobi later this year, I would encourage all of us to speak to our country delegations, just to ensure that they send in delegations to come and participate in the negotiations, because this is not just about having the content there. It's also about numbers. It's also about that solidarity. So if you have many countries in the room, it gives us a bigger voice as the African continent. And then, of course, the other negative, the developed countries are really fighting back. They don't want to seize their taxing rates. They want the status quo to remain as it is. So the fight is on, and that's why we need as many African countries in the room as possible. So those were some of the reflections. The good news, though, is that we are going to have another session in Nairobi later this year. So please let us all be there. I liked the fact that there were quite a number of youth organizations in the room. There were quite a number of civil society organizations. It was very big and massive, and so it was a very huge show of solidarity. And I would encourage us that we keep up the same momentum as we are heading into the negotiations later this year. Of course, there's also a session in August, but that is in New York. And of course, we know there are issues of visas and everything. It's not easy getting to New York. So, but at least we have one in Kenya towards the end of the year. And I hope that we can keep the momentum. So, since I also don't have a lot of time, I'll move on to the next item on drawing the nexus between education and the financing bit, tax justice and equity. And I'll borrow from a report. This report was published, I think it was around 2024 by the Action Aid. And the statistics there are really quite alarming. If you look at, just a minute as I open it, the report is titled Transforming Education Financing in Africa, a Strategic Agenda for the African Union. of education. And this report talks about we are losing about 29 billion in education financing every year. And of course, this is fueled by aggressive tax avoidance and wealthy companies and individuals not paying their fair share of taxes. And then it also has statistics on over 18 million girls being out of primary school in Africa because they don't have money there's no money for infrastructure, there's no money for teachers and all that. And then also the report talks about tax loopholes. I mean, the tax that we are losing, about 146 billion annually. And if you look at this $146 billion, which is being lost, if we could allocate just 20% of this would cover for education costs for over 25 million primary school children. But this is money we are losing. And we're not even speaking about 100% of it. We're just speaking about 20% of the money we are losing. It can cover education costs for over 25 million school children. Then it also talks about 28 out of the 52 African Union countries spending more on debt financing than on education. And this is, I think, it has been common throughout. Countries are spending so much more on debt servicing than education and even other social sectors. And of course, now IMF has started coming in to tell these countries to cut off freeze spending to public sector services, which of course affects education amongst other services. And of course, when we are speaking about this, it is the young people, it's the women, it's the girls who are affected by all this. They are the center of this burden, but also being that they are the biggest, we have the biggest number of young people in Africa. They are the biggest victims of all these issues. Then I'll quickly move on to the opportunities for strengthening youth participation. As I mentioned, we've been, as YTGen, and even we've been coordinating with many youth groups. The UN Major Group on Children and Youth, we've been making quite a number of submissions to the UN Tax Convention Committee, negotiating committee. So this is a very good opportunity. We also have accreditation to participate in these sessions. We participated in Nairobi, we participated in February early this year. We intend to participate in August and also in November, December. So for all young people who are out there, please, we can always work together. We've been working with youth groups in Europe and even in Africa. So this is an opportunity. Please reach out to us. If you have any information, please do some research so that as we go to engage these negotiators, we have our facts at hand. We have our justifications at hand and give them a run for their money. Then also another opportunity, of course, is social media. It's the easiest we can use for now. I mean, at least all of us have data. We have access to gadgets. Please post, share with your colleagues why conversations around the convention are important. Try to draw a linkage between the convention and our day-to-day lives, be it education. Why are children not going to school? Why don't we have infrastructure in our schools? Why don't we have teachers? Why aren't we meeting the issue of the quality education that we call for in the different frameworks that have been enacted? So this is also an opportunity for young people, but also being in the room. As I said, there's a session coming up in Nairobi. Please, if you want to get accreditation to participate, we can always give that accreditation. Try as much as possible to be in Nairobi. But also, as I said again, let us read and have our facts straight. Let us do our research so that we engage from an informed point of view. And then as I conclude, I know I don't have a lot of time. I'll conclude with the questions I asked when I was starting. Who holds the flame high for education? In my view, I think you and I, each one of us here holds the flame high for education, but most importantly, our policymakers and our global leaders. These people are the ones who decide where money goes, whether it should go to education, or it should go to debt servicing, or it should be used for corrupt tendencies. These people are very, very critical. And that's why we need to apply as much pressure on them. When we speak about the negotiations, as I told you earlier, many African countries are not present in the Nairobi negotiation. But this is where the decisions are being made. This is where the UN Text Convention is being negotiated. And this is a convention which is going to be with us for a lot of time. It's going to be binding on us. So if our leaders are not in the room when the things are being negotiated, you can guess where the direction the convention will take. So let us apply pressure on them. Let them be in the room, but also ourselves, since we are also holders of this flame, let us also be in the room. Let us research. Let us provide alternatives which are viable and evidence-based. Yeah. And then on to the next question, which is the last one: who fuels this flame? I think the person or what fuels this flame is the public financing. We are speaking about education now, but we cannot have quality education for every one of us or our children if there is no financing. At the end of the day, you need teachers. Teachers have to be paid. You need infrastructure. Infrastructure also requires money to put it in place. It requires financing. When we even speak about technology or technology systems, these also require infrastructure. If our children are going to use laptop, if they are going to study online, if they are going to do everything, this all requires money. So public financing is very, very important. Our governments allocating as much money to education. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. And indeed, you're right. It is we who hold the flame high. It is our governments at the country level that we need to continue to pursue. But when we pursue them, let us have the necessary advocacy tools. Let us undertake research. Let us engage in policy engagement. Let us influence our member of parliaments to pursue the agenda of education. I see there are 107 people in the call, and us as 107 here, we hold the flame high and we need to continue to advocate. And I'd like at this moment to also pursue all the youth activists who are in Africa. I see also you from Ghana, from Nigeria, Zimbabwe, various of you in this call. Please make it a priority to also this year engage in the processes of the UN Text Convention to ensure that the Africa's presence in Nairobi is much more higher influential. We know how much Africa is losing billions of dollars a year in the loss of all of these mineral extraction resources, and yet we are not benefiting from it as community members. So yes, it's lovely to see everyone join from this. So for now, we're going to move on to the next speaker. We have Miriam Bello, who's going to speak on education financing and its importance with gender equality. Over to you, Miriam.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much, John, for making a way for me to speak about the financing. Hello, everybody, to every 106 of you on this call. I am Mariam Bello from Nigeria. I am the co-founder and CEO of Telika, which is an initiative focused on bridging the financing gap for African entrepreneurs through helping them prove themselves to the institutions that fund them. And additionally, I serve on the Global Leadership Council of UNICEF and the European Union, where I advise on matters that relates to young people, their education, and especially entrepreneurship and financing. And I'm very happy to be here. And yes, so today I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the financing aspect, especially from the gender gap. And I know a lot of us would have heard the saying rather, the financing gap is a gender gap, and it is true. And it starts before the classroom. Now, I believe most of us here know, again, because I'm focusing on the African context, that over half of African girls aged 15 to 19 are either out of school, married, or have children. But the question here is that we rarely ask is, what were they going back to if they stayed? Now, financing education for gender equality is not just about getting girls through the school gates. It is about making sure that what's inside those school gates is worth staying for. Now, a girl who sits through years of education that doesn't speak to her reality, her community, or her livelihood has been failed twice, once by poverty and another by irrelevance. Now, quality education that prepares girls for the world, rather, quality education means education that prepares girls for the world they actually live in. Most African girls will not enter a formal economy. They will start businesses, manage households, trade across borders, farm, or build. And if you're doubting me, maybe check your WhatsApp list. At least you have maybe 10 people, 10 women selling something. Now, an education system financed without that reality in mind is not quality education. It is borrowed curriculum from another continent. And financing gender equality in education means funding skills that are relevant, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, digital skills, agricultural knowledge, health, etc. Not just academic syllables designed for economies that don't look like ours. Now, I usually like to communicate this, especially when I speak to leaders who are actually responsible and sitting in the rooms where these changes are made, especially from the aspect of the economic impact of funding women and entrepreneurs in Africa. Now, every dollar invested in girls returns 10 times, only if the investment is right. You can never get return on investment when you invest in the wrong business. That is how it is. You cannot get investment or the return on investment in women when you don't invest in the right form of education for them. Now, the World Bank estimates that every dollar invested in adolescent girls' empowerment in Africa could generate more than a tenfold return in economic impact, with potential gains of 2.3, 2.4 trillion dollars. And now this means that how we present education financing education for girls should not be presented as charity. We are literally the price. But then these returns are not automatic, as I stated earlier. They depend on whether the education financed into a livelihood is they sorry, I meant yeah, so they are determined by whether the funding or the financing that goes into these women is targeted to their needs and tailored to their reality. And we must finance education that bridges that gap between school and survival. Now, the cost of getting this wrong is not just economic; it is human, obviously, and the cost of not educating girls is estimated to be around 15 to 30 trillion dollars in lost lifetime productivity globally. But behind every statistic is a woman who had something to offer and was never given the conditions to offer it. Now we talk about returns on investment. Usually this happens at the UN General Assembly and all. And those returns matter. But we must be careful not to reduce girls to instruments of economic growth. Obviously, we are not products, we are people. And financing education is first and foremost as a matter of dignity, of justice, and recognizing that every girl has the right to the life she chooses, not a life that is chosen for her by a system that ran out of money. And we must understand that. I saw a comment by someone whose name started with letter M in the chat about Palestinian girls, and this is literally the same reality that we are talking about. Now, education financing must connect to the ecosystem girls graduate into. That is why at my initiative, Telika, we see this gap every day. Educated, capable African women founders who built something real and then walked into an evaluation and funding ecosystem that was not built for them. And that wasn't built for their context, for their market, or their way of communicating value. Now, financing education for gender equality cannot stop at graduation. It must extend into the structures that receive these women, the accelerators, the capital providers, the evaluation frameworks. Because a girl who stayed in school because of this campaign deserves a fair shot at the resources that scale her solution. Now, holding the flame high means we hold it all the way, not just until she leaves the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that powerful intervention and reminding us that investing in education for girls is a matter of their dignity and empowerment. and not because they are commodities or products that should yield benefits. So that is or investment. That was a very powerful intervention. And thank you for sharing your intersection on how importantly so how education intersects with entrepreneurship. So now we're going to move over to our next agenda item, which is more about a collation of visual arts that us as a GCE movement, together with Claude, Aspe, IKEA, as well as ANSEFA, has been able, through all the youth movements, have been able to bring together. Now, these are our contributions, as you heard on Monday, to those who had attended. It was the work that we had started through the Youth Action Group in GCE that wanted to make visual contributions to the special rapporteur for the Youth and Children's Network. Now, the request is for us to really speak on what the global financial pressures means in our country context or its impact. So really, it's compelling videos, it's compelling pictures that are very beautiful that we will be collecting and submitting it in support of GAWE, as well as the Special Rapporteur's Global Financial paper that she will be working on. So Salma, over to you. Can you please just show us 10 seconds of each paper, what everyone has managed to achieve. So this paper, can everyone see the screen? Okay, so this one is from IKEA from Middle East, and this is basically the visual art that says everything: fund education, less on war. And yes. Okay, from here we have from Asia Pacific Youth. This is the consolidated visual arts.
Sorry, Fumza, there are okay. There were gray bands across the picture, so yeah, it's okay now.
Okay. Is it fine? Okay, thank you, Medas. Salma, just slightly slower. Okay, you can move on now. Okay, so on that one, just pause on that one, Salma. So they urgently call on government to increase education financing to facilitate improved quality education services, increase investment in gender-responsive school infrastructure and gender-transformative school curricula to ensure sufficient budget to implement policies, and significantly increase financing and priorities access to marginalized group. Thank you, Salma. Next one.
1945 වසරේදී නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනය මූලික අයිතිවාසිකමක් ලෙස ස්ථාපිත කරමින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව මුළු දකුණු ආසියාවටම මහඟු ආදර්ශයක් සැපයීය. නමුත් 2026 වන විට එම අයිතිය දැඩි තර්ජනයකට ලක්ව තිබේ. ජීවන වියදම අසීමිත ලෙස ඉහළ යාමත් සමග දහස් ගණන් තරුණ තරුණියන්ට නිදහස් අධ්‍යාපනය යන්න හුදෙක් සිහිනයක් පමණක් වෙමින් පවතී. අධ්‍යාපන අයිතිය සුරක්ෂිත කිරීම සඳහා රටක් තම දළ දේශීය නිෂ්පාදිතයෙන් අවම වශයෙන් 4% සිට 6% දක්වා ප්‍රමාණයක් අධ්‍යාපනය වෙනුවෙන් වෙන් කළ යුතු බව යුනෙස්කෝ සංවිධානය පෙන්වා දෙයි. කෙසේ වෙතත් ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ බැංකු වාර්තා පෙන්වා දෙන පරිදි අපේ රටේ එම වියදම වසර ගණනාවක සිටම පවතින්නේ 2%ට වඩා අඩු මට්ටමකයි. මෙහි ප්‍රතිඵල ලෙස ග්‍රාමීය පාසල්වල පහසුකම් අවමවීම, ගුණාත්මක අධ්‍යාපනයක් ලබා දීමට නොහැකිවීම සහ යාවජීව අධ්‍යාපන අවස්ථා සීමිත වීම වැනි බරපතල ගැටලු උද්ගත වී තිබේ. වර්තමානයේ වන විට අධ්‍යාපනය යනු පාසලෙන් හෝ උසස් පෙළින් අවසන් වන්නක් නොවේ. කෘතිම බුද්ධිය මූලික කරගත් නවීන ආර්ථිකයක් තුළ තරුණ තරුණියන්ට ස්ථාවරත්වයක් ගොඩනගා ගත හැක්කේ නිරන්තරයෙන් අලුත් වන යාවජීව අධ්‍යාපනයක් හරහා පමණි. 2024 ලෝක බැංකු වාර්තා මගින් පෙන්වා දෙන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වර්තමාන අධ්‍යාපන ක්‍රමය සහ ගෝලීය රැකියා වෙළඳපොලේ අවශ්‍යතා අතර විශාල පරතරයක් පවතින බවයි. අධ්‍යාපන ශාස්ත්‍රය තුළ මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපාදන නිසි ලෙස යොමු නොවීම මෙයට ප්‍රධානතම හේතුව වී තිබේ. අධ්‍යාපනය සඳහා මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපාදන වැය කිරීමේ වැදගත්කම් පිළිබඳව 2024 වසරේ එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සංවිධානයේ වාර්තා මගින් මැනවින් පැහැදිලි කර ඇත. ඒ අනුව එක් දරුවෙකුගේ අධ්‍යාපනය වෙනුවෙන් ආයෝජනය කරන සෑම ඩොලර් එකක් සඳහාම ඔහුගේ ජීවිත කාලය තුළ ඩොලර් 15ක ආර්ථික වර්ධනයක් රටට හිමිවන බව පෙන්වා දී තිබේ. එබැවින් අධ්‍යාපනයට මුදල් වෙන් කිරීම යනු හුදෙක් වියදමක් නොව රටේ ණයබරින් මිදීම සඳහා දක්ෂ ශ්‍රම බලකායක් නිර්මාණය කරන වඩාත්ම සාර්ථක ආයෝජනය බව අප සැම වටහා ගත යුතුය. එබැවින් නූතන ලෝකයට ගැලපෙන නිපුණතා වර්ධනය කරන අපේ රටේ තරුණ තරුණියන්ට ලෝකයේ සමග උරෙනුර ගැටීමට හැකියාව ලබා දෙන අධ්‍යාපන ක්‍රමයක් වෙනුවෙන් අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රතිපාදන වෙන් කරවා ගැනීමට අප හඬ නැගිය යුතුය. අපේ රටේ අධ්‍යාපනය වෙනුවෙන් දළදේශීය නිෂ්පාදිතයෙන් සැලකිය යුතු ප්‍රතිශතයක් වෙන් කරවා ගැනීම රටේ තිරසාර දියුණුවට මඟ පාදනු ඇත.
Yes, thank you, Salma. So those are just a few highlights that we wanted to showcase for you. As you know, advocacy is not just about speaking and research. There are many creative visual ways that we could show our position, our political positions and what we're advocating for. We also saw a very positive utilization of AI through that amazing video. So yes, so we will be playing another video later on, but please just look out on our social media platforms. We'll be sharing the other contributions that we've received over the couple of weeks as GCE in support of GAWE, as well as our submissions to the Special Rapporteur. So moving on to the next speaker, and thank you to everyone that has been able to submit these things. They have been amazing. The youth are extremely creative, and I've been very much inspired by the work that they do. So thank you for that. So the next speaker is Israel. Israel is representing the Clade Youth Group. He will be looking at investing in climate justice and why education must be funded now. So Israel, over to you on Hold the Flame High, Invest in Education and Transform Our Lives.
Thank you, Fumsa. So I will switch to Spanish. So those who are with us in the Zoom call that did not turn your interpretation on, this is the time to do it. Bien, esta presentación se construyó de manera conjunta con el Grupo de Trabajo de Juventudes CLADE de la Campaña Latinoamericana por el Derecho a la Educación, a partir de los aportes de las juventudes de la región y de las evidencias también levantadas por la clave en distintos
region
estudios
youth
investigaciones.
contributions and different
Bien, para hablar
evidence
sobre
in
financiamiento
the
de la
research.
educación en
To
América
talk
Latina y
about
Caribe, es
financing
importante
of the
recordar
education
algunos
in Latin
parámetros
America and
internacionales
Caribbean,
establecidos
we
desde la
need to
Declaración de Incheon en
remember certain
2015. Según un estudio
parameters
realizado por la
that were
CLAE el año
published in
pasado, en promedio, los países de
2015.
América Latina y el Caribe
Last year,
invierten
as an average,
16.3%
the
del
Latin
presupuesto
America
nacional en
countries and the
educación,
Caribbean
lo
only
que
spend
equivale a 3.9
3%
del Producto Interno
of
Bruto de
the
la región.
national budget in
Esto, según la
education,
declaración de
which
Incheon,
is
es
only
insuficiente para países
one
de renta
point of
baja y
the
media, que debe invertir al menos el 6% de su PBI
of the
en la educación
PBE
pública o el
in
20% del
this, which
presupuesto
is
nacional en educación.
20% of the
Por esta
national
razón,
budget
según
in
la Comisión
education. And
Económica
that
para
is
América
why,
Latina y el
according
Caribe, solo
to
una de
the
las 10
Economic
metas del ODS
Convention,
4
only
avanzará a
one
su
of the
cumplimiento hasta 2030.
10
Esto se siente en las aulas de
ODS
toda la
or
región, en
SDGs
diálogo con
will
las
be
juventudes.
complied
Eso se
with.
siente en las
We
olas
need
solas de calor
to
extremo, con
involve
las
the
lluvias
youth
intensas, los
as
huracanes
we have
y periodos
suffered a
prolongados
lot
de
of
sequía que
disaster,
interrumpen
climate
la realización de
disasters,
las clases y
which
afectan la infraestructura educativa,
affects
lo que
the
impacta la trayectoria educativa de
educational
millones de estudiantes
infrastructure,
de
which
toda
has
la
an
región,
impact on
especialmente a
the
las juventudes que
students in the
pertenecen a
region
grupos
and
marginalizados.
especially to
También
the
se
youth
siente
that
en el
belongs to
abordaje
the
limitado de la
marginalized
educación
groups.
pública sobre el
We
cambio
also
climático. Un
see
estudio
that
de la CLAE
public
sobre el abordaje de
education on
justicia climática en los
climate
currículos
change is
nacionales
extremely
identificó que
important
este fenómeno se
for
estudia
the national
principalmente a partir de
curriculums
una dimensión
and especially
técnico-científica, es decir,
from a
se comprende qué es el
scientific
cambio climático, el
dimension.
efecto
In other
invernadero y
words,
sus
to
causas,
understand what
pero no
climate
avanza
change
para una
is, what the
comprensión
causes
realmente
are,
transformadora.
but also to
Ese abordaje
understand
limitado
this
no
in order
contempla temas
to
como la justicia
make a
climática, la
transformation.
perspectiva de
We
los
need to
pueblos indígenas,
also
el
look at
impacto
the
diferenciado por
indigenous
género
people
de la emergencia
perspective, the
climática, las
impact or
habilidades para
in the
ser
gender
y
for this
transformar el
climate
entorno en que
climate
vivimos. Para
emergency
que
and
eso
to
sea
transform
posible,
the
es necesario
setting in
invertir
which we
en la
live. And for
educación.
this to be
Como
possible, we need
juventudes
to invest
sabemos
in
que la
education.
salida
As
para
the
el
youth, we
financiamiento
know
adecuado de la
that
educación pública
the
está en la
finance to
justicia
the public
fiscalística. En
education
América Latina y
is
el Caribe
found in the
sufrimos con sistemas
tax
de
justice.
tributación
In Latin
regresivos
America,
y
we
problemas de
have a
evasión y
regressive
distribución fiscal,
fiscal
que hace
system,
con que los estados cuenten con pocos
which
recursos para invertir en sus
means that
servicios
the
públicos.
countries don't
Con
have
tributación
enough resources to
regresiva,
invest in
aquellos que quizá
public
no saben
services.
a qué nos
The
referimos,
ones that
nos referimos a
don't
aquellos
know
sistemas
what we
en que,
mean by
en que
saying
hay demasiados impuestos sobre el
regressive
consumo y pocos impuestos sobre
taxes
la renta,
means that we
lo que
have
significa que
too
aquellos
many
que reciben
taxes in
menos pagan
consumption and less
desproporcionadamente más impuestos que aquellas personas que
taxes
reciben más.
on
Un
the
sistema
rich people.
regresivo crea
This
cuellos de
regressive
botella
system
para aumentar el tamaño del
creates
presupuesto general que se podría
bottlenecks in
utilizar para
order
la
to
financiación
increase
de
the
servicios
general
públicos,
budgeted
ya
that
que
could
más
be
impuestos
used for to
afectaría el
finance
consumo de las
public
familias más pobres.
services.
Un sistema progresivo
A
significaría lo contrario.
progressive
Los que
system will
tienen
be the
más pagarían
opposite.
más
The
y los que
ones
tienen
that
menos
have
pagarían
more
menos en
will pay
función de sus
more
ingresos.
than the ones
Voy
that
a
have
compartir con
less.
ustedes un
I'm just
dato
gonna
que compartí
share with
también
you
ayer
a
en el
figure
podcast
that was
de la
shared
CNN.
yesterday
En
in
América
the
Latina y el
postcard.
Caribe
In
se
Latin
da
America and the
impuestos a quienes
Caribbean
tienen más de un
to
millón de dólares en patrimonio,
charge
con un impuesto a la
taxes to
renta
people
bajo,
that have
progresivo, entre
more than
2% y
1
el
million
3,5%.
benefits in
Significaría la
legacy,
recaudación de
would
aproximadamente
mean
26 mil
to
millones de dólares
compile
anuales.
to
Si
collect
consideramos
more
las
than
estimaciones de
$20
la OCDE,
million
que una persona en edad
a
escolar
year.
cuesta en promedio
And
13 mil dólares
the
anuales, la
expenditure on
tributación
a
progresiva podría
person
financiar a
on a
2 millones
school
de estudiantes en
child
América
is
Latina y el Caribe.
actually 3
Eso representa
million
una parte muy
per
pequeña para
year.
los super
And
ricos,
this is
pero
very
hace una
small
gran diferencia para
percentage
la educación pública.
for
Pero un
the
sistema
education,
fiscal
but it makes a
progresivo
big difference in
necesita
the public
también
education. But this
políticas para
progressive
detener la
fiscal system
evasión y la
also
elusión
needs
fiscal.
policies
Si
to
observamos
stop
también un otro dato que
fiscal
compartí con el
evasion.
podcast
I also
ayer,
want
si
to
observamos el
share all
contexto
the
de
figures that are
Honduras
shared
en
in the postcard
2023, los
yesterday. In
recursos
Honduras in
asignados a la educación
2023,
pública
the
equivalían al 3%
resources
del PBI,
assigned
o
to
sea, la
public
mitad de lo
education
necesario
was half of
según la
what we
declaración de
needed,
Incheon.
according to the Incheon
Muchos podrían
Declaration.
decir que no
many could say that we do not have enough money to reach the 6%, but we have seen that the amount lost by fiscal evasion was 16% of the GDP. So if we stop the tax evasion, we could finance the public education for nearly 3 full years. And therefore, for this, we need this following. Firstly, we need that these national fiscal systems are progressive so the countries have enough money to address these inequalities. Secondly, we also demand the implementation of global frameworks to avoid fiscal evasion as it was recommended by the United Nations. And finally, we want accountability to implement these budgets of public education with a real perspective. If we have more resources and we have resources that are better assigned, we can transform education. So we can transform the society towards climate justice. And for this, we need to adapt the school infrastructures by guaranteeing education during emergencies and by protecting this education when there is an extreme climate change. It's also necessary to invest on teachers with dignifying and decent conditions so we can have a real transformative education. We need to promote critical pedagogy so we can include the construction and the identification with the territories. And that can only be done effectively from participative processes that include the entire educational community. We need to also that the youth can participate in this creation and follow up of these projects, political projects, by ensuring that this climate change is structural. The debate of the financing of the public education affects the fulfilling of the right to education. We need to take this seriously because this right habilitates other rights and it's also responsible for all the decision of financing at closed door because affects directly the quality of the education and therefore has an impact on the preservation of life in the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Israel. And indeed, just to add on the stats that you shared of this fiscal invasion, I know that a lot of advocates in the just transition movement are advocating for carbon tax to go into public services such as education and health. Now, imagine if multi-corporations who are in charge of contributing to so much carbon and environmental damage could be taxed. That would ensure that they're accountable and that each CO2 emissions that they contribute actually goes into investing in education as well, which was what Israel in a nutshell is pushing for. So thank you so much, Israel, for that strong intervention. I see a comment here that says youth are not just the future, they are the present, and their right to quality education must be fully funded, protected, and prioritized now. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, please continue to write to us in the chat box and we'll definitely read it when we have time. So our next speaker is Zaya, who's coming from the Mongolian Youth Council. She'll be looking at when budgets shrink, dreams shrink. Youth voices on education cuts and debt cuts on education. So over to you, Zaya, where you look at the hold the flame high to solve the debt crisis and finance the education. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Zaya, we can hear you. Thank you. Just a little bit, just increase your tone a bit. You're a bit low. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Samar Zaya. You can call me Zaya. It's very short. Okay. Very nice to see you here in online meeting here. And I prepared 16 slides. It's very long. I want to try to keep time. And okay, Mongolian Youth Council is an umbrella organization of Mongolian Youth Civil Society. We established 2014. We have 18 member organizations. We have 4 main programs you can see here. And I want to share about our experiences and lessons learned in budget advocacy monitoring from the youth perspective. Our organization has been running the Know Your Budget, Track Your Budget campaign since 2023, and now campaign has become one of our organization's core program, because we understand that effective policy advocacy is not simple budget accountability. And although law and policy advocacy are very important, they cannot be implemented without budget. And also the fact that the level of corruption in our country is not decreasing, that all is very worrying for youth, Mongolian youth. And since citizens and youth are not aware of the budget and are not interested in it, we believe that by bring budget information closer to citizens and providing information with regular independent analysis, citizen participation in the budget will improve. Okay. And for 2025 to 2026, we participated very actively in the state budget discussions as a civil society, because the Mongolian government has declared 2026 as the year of education. And we also analyzed the capital budget and actively participated in the budget approval process. And although it was declared an educational year, during the state budget discussion, the education sector budget was estimated to be reduced from the previous year's budget. And we criticized this during the discussion by participating in online and in-person discussions. We also submitted our recommendations, the relevant ministries, and for example, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Financing. And Mongolian Trade, did you heard that? Mongolian Trade Union also organized demonstrations and demanded an increase in teacher salaries, which is a good result of this, which is that the education budget has increased this year. And you can see the picture, education sector's share of GDP and education sector's budget in this picture. And 2026 is increased GDP, also education budget here. And yesterday, Ministry of Education announced that the decided to launch a project called School Close to Home by dismantling 38 schools with more than 3,000 children. This will be done through a public-private partnership. the State Commission will not accept newly built school in neighborhoods without kindergartens and schools. And regarding the capital city, we will also monitor the capital budget for school and kindergarten investment expenditures. And we aim to monitor the implementation of the 2026 budget plan and communicate and audit findings to the public. And next slide. And what we do, budget transparency program, we have prepared electronic posters, the ministerial portfolios included in the state budget draft, and introduced the citizens to the attention-grabbing expenditures. And we also prepare fact sheets on budget issues every month and regularly distribute them to the public electronically. Every month, we select a topic and organize in-person discussions on the capital city budget issues. In doing so, we are taking measures such as inviting the capital city authorities to participate and inviting budget experts and civil society. And we are preparing recommendations based on the discussions, delivering to them and to decision makers, and sometimes organize press conference and give interviews to media necessary. And also we collaborate the anti-corruption agency, held discussion with the prevention and public awareness department, and member of the capital citizens, capital city council members. And the discussion.
You have 3 minutes left.
Okay.
3 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. You can see the picture. This is approved city UP city budget, and this picture shows that budget for school and kindergarten constructions with which began in 2022 is being shifted over 5 years until now. And while the education budget is being reduced, it's being divided to smaller budgets, and which is not increasing access to education. And this is poster and recommendations. Some meeting pictures here. Okay. Problems in the city budget. I want to share only one point. The city council has 45 members. 40 members are Mongolian People Parties and 5 members are Democratic Party. In addition, 38 council members are also department heads in city government. Also, 5 members are directors of the state-owned enterprises. This is not, they cannot representatives for citizens. Okay. And we tried to work with city council and mayors, but we cannot, they can't, I have to say. Okay, conclusion. High costs for education projects, along with corruption hidden with those projects, are reducing the amount of money actually spent on education children and young people. This will lead budget cuts that will further harm their futures. And last one. Okay. The research suggests increasing Mongolia state education budget at least 20%, around 6% of GDP. This is because Mongolia has a large area, long and cold winters, which means leading to high heating cooling costs. And the education sector, high labor costs all contribute to significant expenses. And you can see this text, and there is still need to increase the education budget in Mongolia and improve budget monitoring and participation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Zaya, and for also showing us the impact of how the Mongolian is impacted by corruption and how it leads to budget cuts. Your intervention is very much appreciated. So we're going to move on to our last youth speaker, who is Nawal. Nawal is representing the ACES youth, and she'll be speaking on education in times of war and crisis, youth in youth experiences, fund education, not war. Over to you, Nawal.
Hello, everyone. First, I would like to sincerely thank you for giving me this opportunity to represent youth. And I apologize, I will be speaking in Arabic, as I believe expressing ourselves in our native language allows our voices to be more authentic and closer to our reality. سأتكلم بشكل مباشر وواضح.
Speak very clearly and very. The issue is not education, but funding. How can be put in a priority? Because the essential issue is not talking about education, but about funding education in our Arab region. We live in a region that is full of crisis and instability, and this imposes a lot of pressure on all sectors. However, education becomes the most sensitive and the most impacted. However, the question is still, is education taking its right position in the public budget? In most cases, the answer is no. Education as priority in the talk. When it comes to walking the talk, the picture is different. Funding education is not enough, and it is not constant, and at the same time does not correlate with the size of the crisis, not because of the short of resources, but it has to do with prioritizing. Budgeting is not just a number, but a reflection of what the state and society considers as important. But if education is in the bottom of the list, then definitely there's going to be a problem. Education is not a subsidiary item that can be put aside. We base on it stability and social coherence. However, when education does not receive enough funding, we are losing not the sector but the societal ability. We see schools operating at limited resources, teachers being pressured, and education pathways that are not stable. However, this is not destiny, which is a result of distribution of resources. So our discussion is how to prioritize in the budgeting in favor of education, because funding of education is not a cost, but it is investment. It is a long-term investment. Every investment in education means a youth more able, more empowered, more stable, and economic opportunity in the long run. However, when education is treated as an item that can be postponed, then we are creating gaps that become very difficult to bridge in the future. Here comes the role of the youth. We are not just impacted by the funding decisions, but we live the result of these decisions. We are the one who to demand. We demand very clearly that education should be in the heart of the budget and not in the margins. And we insist that funding education should be adequate and continuous and very clear. Should not be depending on promises. We demand that the funding priorities must be reviewed so that education can take its position as future investment. It is not a sector that can be postponed. We insist that there should be transparency and accountability in the distribution of education funding, because a lack of clarity means that a lack of justice. The role of youth is not just raising their voices, but to invest their voices to be heard. And there should be an impact. So we say clearly that funding education is not an option, but an imperative. We demand a basic right should be guaranteed. The message is very clear. The problem is not lack of resources, but prioritization within budget. So we state clearly that fund education and put it at the heart of the budget, not in the margin. And then we raise the flame high, and that education should be eliminated irrespective of challenges. And we raise the flame because it represents the real battle, so that we can have real education. So raise the flame high. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nawal. I mean, it's very advocacy focused and strong, and your message is very clear that the crisis in education is not a failure of resources, it is a failure of priorities. Every budget that funds war over education exposes the deeper structural injustices on whose future is being valued and who's being left behind. So thank you very much for those clear, strong words. We're going to play the last video of the day. It's just a short 2-minute video, and then we'll be moving forward to conclusion. We're still doing well with time. We're only 30 minutes till the session ends, but we will be ending earlier. Over to you, Salma.
In many communities across Nigeria, going to school is no longer a given. For students and families, it has become a daily decision shaped by rising costs. Schools' fees are very, very hard to pay. In some cases, in fact, some students miss classes not because they lack interest, but because getting to school is no longer affordable. This creates a new kind of inequality where some students continue learning while others are left behind. This impact is even severe for girls. When financial pressure increases, we all know that education is often the first thing sacrificed. Some girls drop out of schools entirely, increasing their vulnerability to early marriage, exploitation, and long-term economic disadvantage. Through our work at Brain Literacy Development Initiative across communities in Kwara State and Nigeria, we have engaged young people, families, and stakeholders to help better understand these particular challenges. Findings from this research shows a clear pattern. Economic hardship is directly affecting school attendance, learning continuity, and student well-being. In response to this, BYD has supported initiatives that promote access to education, digital inclusion, and safe learning environment, while also amplifying the voice of young people to ensure that their experiences inform policy decision-making. But the scale of these challenges continue to grow. Global financial pressures are not abstract. They are feasible in empty classrooms that we see around, missed opportunities, and interrupted futures of our young people. If education wants to remain a right, then it must be protected, particularly during the time of economic crisis. Thank you.
Okay, Salma, so apparently there's a poll. Can you launch it, please? Okay, while they launch the poll.
I'm launching the poll for you. Give me just a 2 seconds.
Okay, sure. Is it on? I can't see it. Okay, great. So this is a poll. So this is a satisfactory poll that we just want to see. what is your experience on the webinar? How did you find the webinar? And just a feedback poll. It won't take more than 5 minutes. So please, as it's launched on your screen, just quickly finish all the 8 questions on the poll. Thank you. Okay, Sami, I'm going to move forward now. So as we know quickly is that one of the reasons that GAWE 2026 was on education financing is that climate and the time that we find ourselves in, being that it is the Global Partnership for Education's replenishment, as well as the Education Cannot Wait replenishment on financing education. So as GCE, we're supporting that campaign, and that is why this year's theme is on financing. So in the chat box, I will share with you on how you can support the GPE replenishment. You can support it in 2 ways. One, completing the survey in how education financing can change or impact your country, and sharing stories on social media. And the second one could be writing diplomatic letters or letters to members of parliament to send a delegation to the GPE meeting, as well as to support the meeting. You can also write to your embassies. You know, if you have embassies in UK, all of the donor countries, you can write to those embassies who are in your countries to support the replenishment. So yeah, as youth, we also have a role to play. And just also to share, as GCE, we do have a representative who is representing GCE in the Global Youth Leaders Group, who has been selected. Stevens, he could not make it this year today, but he will be connecting with us to share with us all the key updates of the replenishment and how as youth we can engage and support it. Right. So unfortunately, the global coordinator is still busy in another meeting, and I will have to close. I would like to thank each and every guest speaker. The interventions were brilliant. It is always good to hear young, fresh perspectives, and this is indeed what happened here. And we're very much appreciative to see the huge mobilization around this event, as well as the interpreters who have supported us, and would like to really thank you for continuing to support the GCE mobilization of youth. In the chat box, I also dropped my email. If you do not receive our GCE members' mail or around our activities, global activities in the youth, either connect with your regional coordinators, Tasneem or Israel or Lay or myself, or when it comes to global engagement, please send it to me on pomza@campaignforeducation.org. So quick one, I'm just sharing the survey here for GPE, and you will receive all other resources in the post meeting. But thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Pomza, I think we can just relaunch the poll. There's quite a few messages.
Okay, sure, you can relaunch it.